everybody, Russ and My Hammers 11. Hope you're all safe and well. For the YouTube channel, please consider subscribing, hitting the bell icon so you're made aware of any time we put new content on. Make sure you hit that bell icon as well, because obviously we're doing all the games, live game shows every week for Iron Supporting Food Banks. I've got my badge on. Thank you, John, from there. We hope to raise £20,000 by the end of September, and we're at about 16 grand now, so we've still got a couple of weeks left, so hopefully we'll do that. Today's guest, he hasn't been too well, bless him, but he's fighting fit enough to chat to us. It's Matt Lorenzo. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Hi, Russ. I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, as I was saying, you had it, didn't you?
I was an early adopter. I had it late March, early April for about 3 weeks. Middle week was a bit dodgy, but I'm all right now. As I say, there's just a few things. It's got a long tail, as my doctor said, so you still feel a bit odd. But I'm trying to remember how unfit I was to see whether I'm as unfit as I was before. Probably about the same.
I know what you mean. It was the same. My wife said to me the other day, she weighed herself and she went, "Oh, I put so much weight on." I said, "But how do you know? Did you weigh yourself before you went into lockdown?" And she went, "No." I said, "Well, how do you know?" I know I have, but it doesn't matter. But apart from that, obviously you've been busy. Obviously, I saw the Ray's new show on Monday. That was good.
Yeah, it's nice to see it go up. We did it about 2 years ago. It was a simple idea. Ray, who I knew through West Ham and mutual friends, there's a guy called Russell True. Anybody who goes to the Arnold Hills will know Russell. He's the first one in there and the last one to leave. And we have a great time at every home game, sometimes almost always, despite the football. Anyway, he introduced me to Ray a few years ago. And we got together with Bruno Zoccola, who's a mate of mine who runs a few restaurants. And we thought it'd be a good idea for Ray to do a show on Sicily, where he lives part of the year and loves. Bruno to get a bit of publicity for his restaurants, and me to do a bit of TV, which I'm supposed to know something about. Anyway, so we just, three of us went around Sicily for a month and came up with a 6-part series, which went out on Blaze on somewhere on the Sky grid on Monday night.
Yeah, it was great. No, I loved it. It was, and just, I mean, it so suits Ray living in Sicily, doesn't it? It just suits his persona, I think, the way he sort of, he absolutely adores the place, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. A friend of his who was Sicilian took him there on holiday once, and he fell in love with the place. And he's got a great affinity for the people. They're simple, working class people. They're very loyal, very family oriented, very friendly, and he's built himself a house there, which is lovely, and he's sort of very proud of them, and he wanted to do a bit for their country, and it's an absolutely fabulous place. It's a lot bigger than you might think it is, but it's untouched. It's not like many places that you go to. It's as though no one's been there before, and some of the scenery is fantastic, and they do like a drop of wine, which helps.
Yeah, this is probably one of the difficult things about having the older CV19 is the whole taste of smell. One of my bosses had it, and he loves his wine, and so he still hasn't got his taste back, and so he's absolutely gutted at the moment, particularly with the pubs open, because he can't drink anything, he can't taste it. But oh well. But at least the season's about to kick off. How exciting! We all must be very excited, Matt, for a season ahead.
Until last Saturday, and I'm wondering how much of that was due to the tweet that Mark Noble put out the night before. I describe that as cataclysmic. It's not often that the captain of a club will criticise the club in that way so openly. And he said he was angry. I'm sure he could have gone a lot further. And that would hint at some form of disunity and some gulf between the owners and the team, and I think that may have been reflected on Saturday afternoon. I hope that was part of the reason, because the defence was Keystone Cops at times.
Yeah, it was, and obviously I was there, and Bournemouth just looked up for it. They just looked up for it. They just seemed to, and so I just think you're right. I think it was just sort of the perfect storm. We were sort of a bit sort of disgruntled, it seemed, and then obviously Bournemouth came in with their tails up, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. See what happens at Newcastle. Obviously, but then we've got Charlton on the Tuesday as well in the cup. So we haven't got time to mope, which is quite good.
I hope it's a temporary thing. Although, what can I say? I'll have to try and bite my lip over the next few minutes as to what's going on there behind the scenes. But put it this way, I've got some sympathy with Mark Noble.
Sure. Yeah. No, I understand that. Yeah, I know what. I know what people mean, and I mean, it was his personal opinion, isn't it? And so it is what it is. And as you said, it's one of those things which you don't know the effect it's had on the team, but it's galvanised the fan base. That's more than anything. I think the fan base seems more together than ever. So
well, I think they're quite lucky that the place is shut, because if the crowd had been allowed in there this Saturday, I mean, and if Declan goes, which is always a possibility, I think they'll be luckier that there's no one in their ground.
Sure. Yeah. No, I get that totally, and also for the players themselves, because they've played in quite hostile environments before, and it doesn't particularly work well. Obviously, they haven't been playing with no fans since restart, and they did well. They did all right. It was like it just seemed to be a different team than pre-COVID.
On the positive side, they were so much better at the end of the season. It was great to watch, and then again, you say to yourself, well, why couldn't they have done that all season long? There are certain players who didn't pull their fingers out, maybe. Well, when they should have done. I sound very negative here, but the problem is that we've got some good players. We're actually the 18th richest club in the world. Christ knows how that is, and so things could be a lot better.
Yes, it could be. It's on. That's always the thing. I love the way, because I saw a big article about the finances, and with the 18th rich on turnover, not on profit. So we make 100. I think then we spent. I think we made that year. We made 180 million, 190 million, but we spent 225 million because that was the Pellegrini era. And so it's like it's all swings and roundabouts. But we'll see what happens. But when you watch the football, Matt, obviously the football man. Particularly sort of restart, do you have the crowd noise on or the crowd noise off?
Oh, I have it off.
Yeah,
I have it off because I like to hear them swearing if it's all.
That's what everyone says.
Well, it's funny because I was lucky, and I'm lucky and old enough to have been at the Seville game that we played behind closed doors, and that's when you realise that they are shouting at one another all the way through the game, and I find that it's almost an improvement just to hear, what's going on, because you don't hear any of it when a crowd's there. And the other thing about the crowd noise is it's fake, and I don't like it. The other thing is that some commentators feel they have to make up for the lack of a crowd noise, and they mutter on and on and on and on. I won't point any fingers, but it'd be nice if they just let it breathe sometime.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's a dead air type thing, isn't it? And so I know what you mean. It's quite funny how many sort of people you talk to is noise on and noise off. Most people are noise off because they like hearing swear words during the day, and trying to get the commentators. Oh, apologies if you heard any rude. What do you expect? It's not like it's a play school. It's a professional football. But I like listening to it. I mean, obviously, I'm at the ground for the games at the moment, and it is really, really weird because it's like literally so quiet. You can hear the journos typing, literally there on their laptops, on their Macs and stuff. And I have to sometimes put like I don't know, one of the YouTube channels watch-alongs on just to have some sort of moany old people behind me, like I was watching a normal game, because it's too weird out there. I've been to quiet games, but that's just too quiet for me. But we'll see what happens. So you mentioned obviously West Ham. The first question I always ask, he says, 8 minutes in, which is not too bad for me, is why is West Ham your club, Matt? What's your sort of origin story?
Well, I inherited it from my dad, like a few people would have done, I suppose. He was the son of Italian immigrants, and they moved to a shop. My grandmother was a hairdresser, and my grandfather ran a sweet shop round the corner from the Bowl Inn. So it was fairly simple for him to become a West Ham fan, and he was a fanatic, definitely a fanatic. I mean, the clients in the hairdressers would know whether West Ham had won or not, because he'd walk in the front door if they won, and you'd hear the cat being kicked around the back door if they hadn't. So he was a lifelong supporter. He became a journalist on the Stratford Express, and then the News Chronicle and the Daily Sketch, and then the Old Style Sun. Anyway, all the way through, he was incredibly neutral about West Ham, and he became the first commentator on ITV on a show that went out in the late 60s called Star Soccer. Wow. And I was lucky enough to be able to follow him, go to him with games. Billy Wright was the sports editor of ATV who ran that. So that was a tremendous privilege. And I used to go to games with my dad, kneel behind him, when he was commentating, occasionally try and correct him, and meet people like George Best. How privileged was I? So it was football and West Ham, as I say, all the way through. And my dad carried on. He worked on Radio 2, Sport on 2, would go to West Ham games. In the end, he got banned from going to West Ham games because of the bias was just overwhelming. So, yes, it was down to him. And I have two sons, one of whom is West Ham, and the other one supports Liverpool out of spite, I think.
Yeah. Well, you pass it down to one generation, not necessarily. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people get it sort of passed down, and it is almost like someone said to me the other day, because he had a young son who was about 3 or 4 years ago, was sort of he's a West Ham fan, but maybe I want to support Liverpool now, Dad. And he said, no, keep with West Ham, and it's character building, isn't it? You know, it's
something like that.
Yes, something like that. But it is. I mean, you know. Being Liverpool's great, you know, we can beat all these teams all the time, but, you know, you get a bit blasé to it. We know, as you said, you know, the frustrating thing about restart was why couldn't we play like that all season? But that has always been West Ham. We know they turn up to the big games, and we enjoy those big games because you have the peaks. They're not too many peaks, but when you have a peak, you enjoy it. And
I think you may be right. I mean, they're rarer, these peaks, but when you beat Spurs, when you beat Liverpool 3-0, when you beat Arsenal, first ones to beat them at their lovely new ground. That's you remember things like that. It's quite petty, but you do. And I think there's something about it's the hope that kills you, the pain that keeps you coming back. And there's, you know, fortune's always hiding, goes the lyric, and that's about right, isn't it?
It is. It's like someone likened it to an abusive relationship. In that you keep going back, and you make them a nice dinner, and you turn up thinking they're going to change, but they don't change. But you have this sort of, you know, and every season I'm the same. I think it's going to be our season. Then, you know, after about, you know, half time at the Newcastle game or something, I'll be back to reality for the year. But it is what it is. But do you remember your first game, Matt? West Ham game?
I can't think of a particular game. I seem to remember a 5-5 between. Should have looked this up, so I'd be clear about it. 5-5 between West Ham and Chelsea. There were lots of games like that.
Yeah.
And again, I was privileged because my dad would take me. He'd be in the press box, and I'd go with him, and he'd get me the extra ticket, not from the club so much as he would know the commissionaires. So they go, "Hello, Pete," when he walked in, and then he'd go, "Hello, Sid, how are you?" And then he'd say, "How's Mabel?" Now that was class, to know the bloke's wife's name. And that way we would get ushered in. So I'd get to watch the game. I mean, I tried it out actually a while ago when it was still at the Berlin. And I took a mate and I said, let's just see if I can BS my way in here. And I got all the way in, right up to the director's spot, past the stewards, right into the director's lounge, because I knew people all the way along.
Yeah.
But we were playing Chelsea. And because the director's box was full, we got rumbled and kicked out. But it was just to see if you could still do that. Don't think I could do it nowadays.
I did it once in the States at the Red Bulls arena when I went to see the Red Bulls. I was out there for a few months, and I blagged my way in saying I was West Ham. Because at West Ham I turn up 4 hours before a game anyway. It's like because we have to set up. So that's my assumption that you do. And obviously there was no fans around. And some bloke was like, "You're all right. You look a bit lost." And I said, "Oh yeah, well, you know." And I said, "Oh, I'm from West Ham United. I'm sort of doing." He went, "Oh, come in. Got a free hat, a free scarf, a little tour around." He said, "Don't forget to tell them how great we are at New York Red Bulls." I went, I won't. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's the only time I'd get away with that. Nowhere else. But and that's the thing. It's like, as you said, you know, I think that's the thing about being a West Ham fan as well. You had the memories of going with your dad, obviously going with one of your sons. That's what it is. I think that's what people miss, is that sort of family connection, which they haven't had since lockdown. You know, it's you can watch as many games as you want on telly, but you know, the sooner we get everyone back, the better. I think in terms of you know, I mean, I know they've done the test game. I think they've got I think the women's West Ham women's match is one of the test games they're doing as well. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, we talk about nostalgia. That's what we do in this channel. We don't talk about the current situation at West Ham. Anyway, let's go and talk about your 11, Matt. So the whole like concept is the Hammers 11 really. So the idea is we interview people, we find out about why West Ham, whether it's players or fans, and then we find out about their 11. So the 11 players that might have meant something to them, might not meant something to them, might be, you know, the shittest 11, doesn't really matter, but it's 11 players. The only rule is you have to be alive to have seen them play. As we said on Twitter, I can't put Bobby Moore in, but I could put in someone else, for example. You know, Gary Breen, but we're not going to utter him in the same sentence. And that's what we do. So we go through each of the players, and you know, obviously you have your stories and memories about why you've picked those players. So we'll start off in goal, Matt. We'll start off in goal. Who's your keeper for the Lorenzo 11?
Well, it'd be Phil Parkes, the best keeper I saw in a West Ham shirt. I think he galvanised the team when he came over. It was an awful lot of money, which was a huge thing to, you know, a burden really. But he overcame that, and he was part of one of the most exciting teams or the exciting periods that the club had. So it'd be him. I've got fond memories of others though. Bobby Ferguson I used to watch from the North Bank, and Mervyn Day as well. And Ludo Mishkloshlo, I can't say the name properly. I remember I took my son to Chapel Heath because he was a keen goalkeeper in his youth, you know, 11 or 12. We were just walking around, and Ludo said hello and I said he wants to be a keeper. And he gave him one-on-one coaching along with the other goalkeepers for about 20 minutes, which I think was brilliant. A lovely guy. So, yeah, a number of keepers, but I'd say the best would have to be Parksy.
Yeah. And he's just turned 70 as well, Mr. Parkes has.
Yeah.
So yeah, good luck to him. He grew his hair back for it. Apparently, Marie told me. So his daughter. So bless him. Right, we'll put Phil in. Are we playing a straight 4-4-2, Matt?
Well, play 4-4-2. I used to when I hosted the football for Sky and for ITV.
Yeah.
You sit next to people like Glenn Hoddle and David Pleat, I remember as well, and they just see a different game to you. I knew they were. They just do everything, and they're talking about moves, and they switch to a 3, and he's going for a 4. I couldn't work any of that out, to be honest. So I wouldn't know if it was a 4-3-3, a 10-1, or whatever. But I'd have this fullback.
Yeah.
One of my fullbacks, I'd have Tonka, Ray Stewart. Definitely.
Yeah.
Again from the same period. I like the way he took penalties, never ever missed, rarely missed. He was great in the tackle and a thoroughly decent human being. I saw him in one of the hospitality lounges last year, and I was talking to him, and then a mate of mine came up with his son, and I suppose it happens a lot, doesn't it? You want to tell the kid that this is a great player, but they don't get it, do they? I suppose it happens to everyone. I did it with my own son. We were on holiday, and I bumped into Kenny Dalglish. Sounds like name dropping, but I get on very well with Kenny. And we went for lunch together, and my son was with us. He was about 12. So we had a nice 2-hour lunch, and we're walking home, back to the villa afterwards. I said, "Well, how about that?" I said, "You had lunch with Kenny Dalglish," and he went, "Who is he?" So I suppose that's a generational thing. But we've got from Ray Stewart to that. But back to Ray. Lovely man, very nice man, great player. He would be worth a fortune in this day and age.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's a lovely man. We've had plenty of chats. When everything gets back to normal, he's coming on the channel, and Phil is actually as well. They don't like doing all the Zoom stuff, so they're not very technical. So yeah, that'd be good. So good old Ray. You carry on, mate. You go for the team as you want, mate. Whatever formation you want to do. I'm not bothered. You just carry on with your 11.
Well, the other fullback would be Frank Lampard Snr. But the best game I ever saw, probably wasn't the best game of football I ever saw, but it was the most exciting game was the replay in 1980 when we beat Everton. And the goal he scored was just fantastic. It was like being plugged into the mains when that happened. And I think he's another character. I did the film on Bobby Moore a couple of years ago, and we interviewed Frank for that. And it was brilliant. I mean, the way he spoke about Bobby and about the old times. You don't get that sort of loyalty nowadays. You just don't. I think football is a mercenary by comparison. And what he did with his own son is brilliant. I know Frank had a rough ride when he was at West Ham, but he would always be, there at training in the afternoon as well as the morning. He'd always do the extra. I think that his dad taught him well, and now I think the sky's the limit for Frank Lampard Jr. Probably off the background, the grounding that he had.
Yeah, definitely. No, he's a good shout. And I think the trouble is with Frank Senior is to me, and that's doing this sort of this. I think we've had about 180 or so guests or something like that. And when it's almost like Frank Senior's sort of not in that same bracket when you talk about the greats, and he should be. He should be in this. He played more games than most people in West Ham, bar Billy Bonds, I think, and he's not put in that same bracket, and it's a travesty. I think because obviously the whole thing with Harry and Frank Senior sort of not tarnished his West Ham legacy, but it's a real shame, I think, because over 600 appearances for a club is phenomenal.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And he was a great player. Sometimes you talk about your club, and then you're in a way you're in a bubble, and I wouldn't know about the equivalent at Sheffield Wednesday or at Leeds, the players that they hold dear. But I think he was worthy of greater recognition, and the same applies to Bonzo, who's next up. I think did he get one England cap? I don't know. Was that just?
I think he got one. I think he was meant to, and he got injured or something like that.
Well, that's a disgrace. But anyway, what a hero! I mean, just people who are watching this will know all about him, so I don't have to describe him. But I just seem to remember him being like Cachis, like some sort of Red Indian running around the place. When I went to Chapel Heath, they'd have the pre-season. They'd all go for a run before training started, lapping, like cross country run. He'd always win it. He'd always be, even if he was in his 30s. And when he came back, when they named the stand after him, I just hoped that I would bump into him, but I didn't. I was on the same level in one of those hospitality lounges, but I didn't see him. And then I'm walking out, and he just came out of the director's box, and I said, "Hello, Bill." Will he even recognise me? He said, "Matt, how are you, man?" It was great just to talk to him. What a nice, decent man. When I was working on the Walthamstow Guardian, and I got to cover West Ham week in, week out, you would wait outside the dressing room for the players to come out, and Bill would always be the first with 4 lagers that he whipped from the players now somewhere. No time to talk to anybody, and straight out. And he's the same today. He's a family man. But anyway, what a great player. What an inspiration. And how different to some of those wandering around wearing the shirt nowadays.
Yeah, and I think you're right. But I just think it's not just West Ham. I think, as you said, it's football, like sort of modern football in general. They're all mercenaries now, aren't they? It's a job now. It's not really you get the exceptions to the rule like Mark Noble and stuff, but you don't get players hanging around for more than 3 or 4 years. If you get that out of a manager, you've done well either as well. It's you don't get sort of the John Lars and stuff anymore. But Billy's in, Bonzo's in. Who's next, Matt?
Alvin Martin. He was, again, I was on that local paper, and it was terrifying that I was about 19. You had to go to the ground or the training ground and say hello to these people. The good thing about Alvin was that he had arrived just about the same time. So I was new to it, and he was new to it. And I remember saying hello and him saying hello back. And then I got our chief photographer to run off a load of extra photographs of him that I presented to him the next week. So we formed a little bit of a bond. This all sounds sort of very personal, as though I care more about them being friends than players, but he was both. I mean, I thought he was a great player, again, worthy of more recognition than he actually got. And last year I met him with a mate, and we went for a quiet lunch, and then we had afternoon tea, and it turned into late night drinks as well. That was what you call a session. Anyway, very nice man, and really one of the pictures of the year was him embracing his son. After it's Chelsea, wasn't it, that he had that display again? So that was lovely to see. It's nice to see it passed on in that way.
Yeah, no, it's because you had that sort of the personal and the professional side. It was he had so much sort of pride for his son playing in the Premier League, but also playing for their club as well. It was lovely, wasn't it? It was just a really, really nice thing. And obviously when Bill had the stand named after him, Alv did the PA. And so just shows and for a person who's not from around these parts, well, he hung about, and he stayed
Yeah.
around here. So no, bless him. No, bless him. He's still his grandson goes to my daughter's. He's the same year as my daughter, and so the school fates. He'll be there with because his son runs a football academy as well. So he'll be there, sort of leaning against the goal, doing penalties and stuff. And it's bless. That's incredible that he still does all that stuff, and I love him for that. All right, Alv's in, Bonzo. This is a formidable team, Matt. Let's keep going. Who's next?
Robert Moore, OBE, who I'd be surprised if he wasn't in every team you've had over the last 400 interviews, whatever you've done. What a player. I mean, I did the film on him, Bobby, still on Amazon. Watch that. I get about 3p if you watch it. He was a hero. What a man on and off. What can you say, really? Again, I was lucky to have known him. My dad was very close to him. They were mates, fair enough. And he used to come round to the house, have a cup of tea or whatever. So I was aged 9 or so playing football in the back garden with England's World Cup winning captain, which was maybe something of a hate figure at school, especially when I can't go on about how I used to wind people up with it. But so he was a lovely man, and I knew him all through his life, really, professionally and personally. And then I got to Sky. When it first started, I was doing sport on Sky News, and this would be in the very late 80s, early 90s. And they were looking around for someone to preview that weekend's fixtures. And I said, what about Bobby Moore? And I remember my boss saying to me, Bobby Moore's a bit old hat, isn't he? And I thought, right, that's just so wrong. And that stayed with me. And I thought, I'm going to do this film and I'm going to put the record straight. And there's a lot of rubbish spoken about Bobby off the field, which was all wrong. And I hope we disprove that in the film. And he was a proper gentleman. Whenever, he was always on duty, if you like. Whenever we came up to him, he spoke to them. He had time for everybody. And the one thing, everybody knows the Bobby Moore story. The one thing that I should have put in the film and didn't is that when he was diagnosed with cancer and it was terminal, there was no help for him. He carried on going to see a specialist. He used to fly up to see a specialist in Edinburgh every week. And he carried on going so that the professor could carry on doing research on him to help others. And there was a bloke called Ted Croker, who was secretary of the FA, who had the same disease. And his son, Andrew, is a mate of mine, who told me that it was because of Bobby that they worked out how to save his dad. So he couldn't save himself, but he helped others. I mean, it's just incredible. Why he never became an ambassador, why he never became what Pele was for Brazil or Beckenbauer was for the Germans. There's a few people in the FA who have some questions to answer there. In fact, just to waffle on, we got Greg Dyke, who was formerly the boss of the FA, to apologise on behalf of his four predecessors about how they treated him. So that was a result in one way. Anyway, Bobby Moore, peerless player. I used to love it. He wasn't fast. He couldn't tackle, couldn't head the ball, and he was still ahead of everybody else. And I watched Declan Rice. There's something about his gait, about his unflappability, and it is a way to surpass the ball. He's not as good, but he does remind me of him, which is about as higher compliment as you pay anybody.
Yeah, no, exactly. But someone the thing about Declan Rice is, there's obviously at the moment there's this sort of Frank Lampard clearly wants him eventually, maybe not this year, I think, because they've already got Silva in. But want him as his centre back. But Dec is one of the best defensive midfielders, I think, in the game at the moment, and it's just be a loss to England if they put him in the centre back positions. But
so he's so young still, and yet he's taken it all in his stride, and he can hit a ball as well. He scored some tasty goals. And he'll go when they all bloody go, don't they? As long as he doesn't. It looks like Chelsea. If you went to Spurs, that would be. I
don't think he'll go to Spurs. No, I think if he went to Spurs, I think he's one of those players, Decky's, that everyone sort of would wish him well if he went. Everyone doesn't want him to go, but everyone knows that he's sort of too good for us. Really, he's on another level. Really, I think.
Yeah.
a bit similar to when we had that sort of golden era, but obviously where you had like Joe and Frank, and I remember Glenn Johnson like debuting, and the first thing you think is, right, well he's gone in after in 12 games time or 20 games time because he's too good for us, and it's a shame, but it is. But I just think I don't know. I've just got an inkling with Deck. I don't know. I think there's under the tutelage of Mark Noble. Mark has a lot of free passes with West Ham fans. He might not have a great game, and another player might not have a great game, but they'll get more stick than Mark because he's Mr. West Ham. Mm-hmm. And to me, I think Deck sees that, and if only we had another Mr. West Ham on our hands. But we'll see. It's a funny old game, as someone said once, wasn't it? So anything can happen. Right, okay. So Bobby is in. Or should be Sir Bobby. Who is next, Matt?
Martin Peters.
Oh.
I'm going through how we won the World Cup, but he was a great player. Famously, Ramsey said of him, he's 10 years ahead of his time, and he was really class act. I felt really hurt when he went to Spurs. But you never know the circumstances. And I think that Moro would have gone to Spurs or Arsenal, given a chance. So you have to appreciate that even back then, there were bigger opportunities available to them. But what a great player, what a lovely man. And I remember, again, it's a personal thing. I knew him through my dad. And I remember going to the Wellington Hospital a good few years ago, and I saw him coming out. And I was going, and he said, "Hello, Matthew, how are you?" I said, "Very well." I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I've got this knee problem. Don't want to bother you about it. I did it on Hackney Marshes decades ago, and it's never been right." I thought, I shut myself up. So, "What are you doing here?" "Oh, just getting some tablets for my depression." I thought, "What?" I think, well, one, I didn't know you had depression, and two, you shouldn't be telling me things like that. So he wasn't very well at that time, and then we interviewed him for the film. And his agent, who shall remain deservedly nameless, said, "Yeah, he'll do it. He's fine. It'll be £2,000 though." I said, "All right, as long as it goes to Martin." And we set up to do the film. And he came in. He had no idea who I was. No. He could barely remember. I mean, he just wasn't very well at all. But he'd come to do this not for the money. And as I say, I'm not sure if he saw much of the money. But he delivered one line which went into the film, is that I loved Bobby Moore as a person, as a man. That was the only line I think we used, but it was almost worth it. So, yes, I mean, he was a great player, and it's very sad the way it finished up.
Yeah, I mean, it was when we used to get him on the pitch at half time, or we used to, we'd get the old players out, and we'd always, we deliberately would never really speak to Martin because you didn't know whether he was going to have a good day or a bad day, and it's a shame because he was such a lovely person when he was having a good day. So Martin, and it's funny when you say Martin Peters went, it was he went to Tottenham, as you said. Bobby may have easily gone to Spurs or Arsenal, and in the modern day, sort of my era, Scott Parker goes to Tottenham. He's vilified, by many people, but it's funny how sort of everything changes in sort of different eras. But I was talking to one guy, and he only started supporting West Ham because of Martin Peters, because of the World Cup, because 66. Oh, who's this guy? Oh, I like him. What team does he play for? West Ham. I'm gonna play for West Ham. Obviously, back in the day, if you missed, I don't know, the news or on the radio or the newspapers, you wouldn't know if players had moved from club to club. So his first game was in 1970, away to Tottenham. And he didn't know that Martin Peters had moved to Tottenham. And so he got the team sheet at the back of the programme. He's like, what? But he stayed with them ever since. And he's the match day announcer at West Ham. And he has been for many years, Martin, bless him. God bless. So we'll put Peters in. Who is next, Matt?
Well, I had a choice here. This would be for the old farts or the newer brigade. I mean, the old farts, me included, would have gone for Pop Robson, Brian Robson, featured in that time when I was covering the team week in, week out, and he was a great player. I mean, he scored some fantastic goals. I'm not even sure it was the right position, but anyway, this is the one that I struggled over. So it's either him or Di Canio that I put in there. But, everybody knows about Di Canio, what a player he was. It was brave in a way of Harry to take him on.
He was.
I mean, on that incident where he pushed the referee over and the referee went down in installments, I didn't think it made it any easier for him. But he was a character and a half. I remember it got nothing to do with football, but after a game once, I managed to get myself into the club car park, which was, a rare honour.
Yeah.
And I left, and Di Canio lived not far from my mother in Loughton in Essex, so I decided I would follow him to see if he knew a quick way around. He did know a quick way around. We went through 2 no entries and 1 red light, and I shouldn't have followed him because I suspect if either of us got pulled up, there's only one of us that would have got away with it, and it wouldn't have been me. But yeah, fantastic goal scorer, and the sort of person that you would literally pay to go and see.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a proper West Ham player in a way, skill, talent, prone to the odd lapse here and there. So yeah, it's Pop and Di Canio sharing a place. I don't know, couldn't choose between them.
No worries, no probs, no worries at all. Yeah, no, I used to remember seeing, so I used to live in Loughton as well, so I used to love seeing, occasionally you'd see him go past in his car, like, it was him, just because it was, and it's funny, so many people say the sort of individual Di Canio stories, and, where people have interviewed him for fanzines and stuff, and that's why everyone's brilliant. Every story, there's one where he was out, a guy was outside Chadwell Heath waiting for, Di Canio wasn't playing, so he was training there, and all we could hear was the Paolo Di Canio song being whistled for about 40 minutes, and then Paolo walks out from the shower. It was him singing his own bloody song for 40 minutes in a towel and like another towel draped over him and flip flops. Just about to get into his car and drive home. But I love Paolo. No, he said he was. And he had a little bit of craziness that every West Ham fan likes.
Yeah, I think you need to support West Ham and play for him.
Yeah, let alone play for him. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, we'll put a Pop / Paolo in for that position. Who's next then, Matt?
So Trevor Brooking.
Yep.
Just a marvellous player. Got 2 A levels, which made him intelligent, apparently. But again, as a man, he's a tremendous example. You see him now, he'll talk to anybody. Quite, what's the word? He's not vain in any way. No. But what a great player. Now, when he and Devonshire were in their pomp, it was a thing of beauty. And I can't explain it properly to people who weren't there. But, you used to get really, you just knew that they were going to roast people between them. And one of my favourite ever games was the Eintracht Frankfurt one, which Trevor, pretty much ran. Yeah. And I just like the way that it was about football with him. He could have gone into business. I mean, he became a successful business latterly, but he could have done so many things. But it was pretty much the love of the game for him. It wasn't be all and end all, but he just loved it. And he was so disciplined. So, isn't he West Ham's most successful manager when he took over?
I believe his win rate is, something like that. Yeah.
But a great example. And he still goes there and sits in that director's box, and he is a rare touch of class in that particular gathering.
Yeah. And it's important that he's still around, definitely, because I just think he legitimises things, doesn't he, to some extent as well. And a lovely guy, beautiful man, as everyone says. Right, so Trev is in next.
Well, I mentioned Alan Devonshire, so he goes in there, and I delight telling people that he's my favourite ever player, because people think, who, or they think that's an unusual choice. But again, what a great player, and it's so upsetting in a way that he could have been so much better were it not for the injuries. But just a brilliant. I mean, when he got the ball, it was a bit like Best in the old times. You knew he was going to hang on to it and do something special. It's an old-fashioned word, dribbling, but he could dribble.
Yes.
I go back to Chelsea and Charlie Cook, who could dribble. It's one of the most thrilling parts of a football match. You're seeing someone take someone on, and then another person. He was great. And as I say, in tandem with Brooking, an absolute delight. So yeah, I think they're great, and I just wish there was enough video around to show people how good they were.
Yeah, of course. So, it's that time, wasn't it? Unfortunately. Yeah. But also, I think for me, it's like what I've appreciated a lot more is obviously because people talk about Devonshire and Brooking, people like in so high esteem. Sort of personally, obviously we know him as a the legend, so to speak, but actually personally, I've obviously watched a lot more footage in lockdown as you can do, because once Tiger King's been watched, there's nothing else to watch really, and obviously Bobby on Amazon Prime, and just they were just beautiful players on absolutely horrific pitches. Do you know what I mean? It's just like absolute. It was just almost like sand. It was just sand. There wasn't that. I watched that Chelsea because we interviewed Frank Macca, and he said, we talk about the Chelsea game when they beat Chelsea 4-0 away, and he said, go and watch it and look at the state of the pitch. And I watched the whole, and I was like, that is incredible how they could play such beautiful football on absolute bogs of pitches. What would they do on the bowling greens of the Premier League now, being absolutely incredible, and vice versa. The sort of the flashy players now. They wouldn't be able to do it on those pitches, that's for sure.
Yeah, the one I love, little story about Dev is that he's now a manager, as you know, and he was manager at Billericay, which was a problem for him because he lived in Hampton at the time, which is about, that's the worst journey in the world to get across town or around town to get to work every day. And he can't drive.
No, he can't drive, no.
So his wife had to drive him every day, hang around for a bit, go shopping or whatever, and then pick him up and drive back again. This was not a good state of affairs until Alan had a brainwave. He signed a striker from Hampton and got him to drive him in every day, which is a stroke of genius.
Well, not only can't he drive, he can't figure out how to do Zoom. So his wife had to do it when we interviewed him, bless him.
All right.
And I just had 10 minutes of his wife phoning up. It's not working. Okay, we put this one in and
he was bright in other ways. We can all try and do Zoom, but none of us could have done what he did.
Yeah, and for $5,000 from what's name from Southall, it was absolutely mental. Okay, right. I think there's one more spot.
Yes.
Who have we got?
It goes to Geoff Hurst. I mean, I think all my choices are fairly obvious. Geoff, who won the World Cup for England and West Ham. I mean, it's one of the biggest. How is it that we had those three players and we weren't winning the league?
No, it was sixth the following year, something like that. But yes.
But he was old style, obviously, but a proper centre forward, great header of the ball, great shot on him. Just a marvellous player for England and for West Ham. And he's of the World Cup surviving World Cup players, England players. He's the fittest by a country mile. Still looks good. Yeah. So. I mean, I could say I'm mentioning players that people know all about anyway. So what can I add to it? But no,
it's not, because again, it's a generational thing, as we were saying before. So it's like, for me, I love listening to the more experienced fans because I haven't lived through any of that. And you can see, you get told things and you see stuff on YouTube, but listening to people's recollections and personal stories, I think that's why we don't have just West Ham fans. I've other day messages from Arsenal and Tottenham and Chelsea fans who don't have anything like this, and so they're saying thank you for lockdown. It's nice to listen to stories, even if it's not about our club and stuff, and that's why people love it. But no, because none of those are in my team, obviously, because I never saw any of them, and that's what's great about this. And Matt, it's been lovely. I told you 45 minutes, and I had 2 minutes to spare.
Well done.
Not too bad.
Yeah,
thank you.
Absolutely. And you didn't cut to any breaks either. Well done.
No. All done through. So thank you so much for your time, man. I really, really appreciate it. I know you're busy. I know there's lots of documentaries you're working on and stuff as well. The Cantona, is the Cantona one coming up?
It's one on United. The United Way with Cantona, Eric Cantona. That comes out early next year. Yeah, that's quite good.
Cool. That's quite good. There we go. So thank you, Matt. And obviously thank you to everyone for watching or listening on Spotify or whatever as well. Whatever you watch or listening to it, make sure you subscribe and share it. And don't forget to check out Blaze TV for the old Ray Winstone Sicily. It's really, really good. The first episode was really good on Monday. And until next time, for me and Matt's, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Come on, you wines. And we'll see you again very, very soon. See you later, everyone. Take care.